Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Material Matters with Grant Gibson. The show has been running for over 6 years now. However, for listeners who might be new to all this, the idea is I speak to a designer, maker, artist or architect about a material or technique with which they're intrinsically linked and discover how it changed their lives and careers. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to Lulu Harrison. Lulu is a researcher and maker in sustainable material development. She creates glass pieces that have often been inspired by ancient techniques working with local and waste resources. Over the years, she's collaborated with historians, material scientists and artists to create geo-specific glass. A graduate of the Material Futures course at Central St Martin's, she's recently won the Ralph Saltzman Prize for her project Thames Glass, which uses various waste materials from the River Thames, including river sand, wood ashes and quagga mussels, and has had an accompanying solo show at the Design Museum in London. Lulu, thank you so much for doing this. How the devil are you?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well, thanks.
Oh, good. Was that intro passable?
It was, yes, it sounded great to me.
Good. Thank you. We have a tradition on this podcast of asking guests where they work. Well, I guess we get a sense of a bit about you from the environment you create. So you're in Oxfordshire at the moment?
Yeah.
And when we spoke last week, you were in Cornwall. So
yes.
You're having a busy summer. What are you doing in Oxfordshire right now?
I've come back to do several things really, but just to see family and collect some materials actually. Yeah, I've just this morning been to the Thames Water, one of their main sites near Farmwell Reservoir, and it's where I go and collect the quagga mussel shells.
So you're back at parental home?
Yes.
But your studio's in Cornwall now?
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, and so how long have you been based there? Because when we met a while ago, you used to be in Cockpit in Bloomsbury, right?
Yeah. In Cornwall, we've moved down for about 4 months now. We've been there. So it's still fairly new. And yes, I've secured a studio space. It's like a farm. It's a working farm, but they also have kind of workshops on the side. And it's called Higher Spargo. And they've actually just started an art school there as well. A lot of these workshops have been turned into kind of artist studios. And there have been a collection of artists there that have been there for over 25 years. And it's just, it's an amazing space. So my studio will be ready at the beginning of next year. It has a lot of work to do to it.
Okay, so because we usually ask our guests to describe their studio space. Right now,
yes.
It's a shell of a building, is what you're saying.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's got a car parked in it and it needs a new roof.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But it's in an amazing stone building and I'm renting a bit of land from them as well. It's got amazing views kind of looking onto the hills and I'm hoping to build a temporary shed there. And then use it as well to do a lot of my kind of burning and ashing of materials, mixing batches. It's great for doing stuff that needs to be kind of outside and well ventilated.
And when you do have your own space ready,
yes,
what kind of worker are you? Is your space, scrupulously tidy? Do you have everything in particular containers and boxes, or is stuff kind of strewn everywhere?
The work itself is inherently sort of quite messy work. But I'm really excited about this space because it will be the first time, hopefully, that I actually have my own glass melting furnace. So I'm looking at kind of whether we can actually build one ourselves or potentially buy one. But there's so much opportunity to collaborate with people down there. And there are so many knowledgeable people that seem to know about furnace building and what that might look like for experimental glass making. So I'm hoping to have a furnace in there and be able to kind of do my own experimental batch melting. And just do my own tests really. And then slowly be able to create my own glass chunks and then transport them from kind of one studio, so my studio, to then other glass blower studios so then they can work with them and actually blow pieces from the different glass recipes.
Right. So why the move from London to Cornwall?
Several reasons really. I think a lot of it was just we really wanted space. And to be reconnected with nature. I used to live in Cornwall. I'd studied my BA there 13 years ago now, which seems crazy. So I lived in Cornwall for 3 years and my grandma and my great-grandmother, they came from Falmouth. So there's a family link there too. So it's really lovely to go back. And I've just always had this very special connection with the place. But really also to be next to the sea it's always been a dream of mine. So I think it's definitely been the right move. Just to allow ourselves to kind of have more space to do, especially for my work, as you know, it's very hard. You need that space and access to the outdoors to be able to do this kind of glass making.
And presumably, because you used we, then you've moved down with your partner.
Correct.
And what do they do?
So he runs a street food business. So he's a chef, and he's hoping to kind of start running his own stall at markets and events and festivals. And there's a good amount of summer trade down there. So hopefully there'll be a lot of opportunities that come his way.
It sounds kind of idyllic, Lulu. I might come and join you, actually.
Yes.
Congratulations on the Ralph Saltzman Prize from the Design Museum.
Thank you.
As the winner, you pick up, £10,000, which is a substantial, correct, I would suggest, sum of money. And you've had this solo show. Previous winners have included, well, Matt Collins won the first one, who was a fairly recent graduate, but Marco Campano has won, and Achua Apriccio is another. So it isn't necessarily a prize for people who have come straight out of university. How does it work? Do you put yourself forward for that, or does somebody nominate you?
Yeah, so it's actually done through nominations. So I think it was last Christmas, and I got this email come through from the Design Museum, and it said I'd been nominated for the prize. And I, having not applied for it, I had kind of no idea. And so it was absolutely incredible to receive this email. And then it said, I think it was between 7 people, and then they sort of whittled it down to 5. And then once they had the kind of final 5, I think we all had to submit a presentation of our work, and we'd all been chosen for a specific project. So I think I spent, most of that Christmas just like working on this presentation. It was such an amazing opportunity, and I just wanted to put everything into it. So submitted the presentation, and then it just went through, I think it went through a few rounds of kind of judging and different people looking at it. And then, I found out sort of earlier that I'd been chosen as the prize winner. So it was absolutely incredible to hear that news. And I feel incredibly grateful to have been chosen for it.
Well, it was a delightful show. I mean, unfortunately, I think by the time that this podcast comes out, it will have probably closed.
Yes.
But I was so taken with it. And obviously, I've known your work since you're a student. But I was so taken with it, I thought I had to record this with you. Tell me, when you're in it, do you have a sense of what the judges are looking for?
I think kind of from what I'd had a look at and sort of seen with the kind of previous winners, I think it was a lot of what they were interested in is not being afraid to experiment with new materials and how that might be portrayed within design and the design world and what that can look like. And for my own work, it was very much about the process that's involved. I see that as an art form in itself, the actual process, and thinking about narrative. And I think having a story and showing your work through that's what they were really interested in seeing, and seeing how it can all be done. But I think that's what they were looking for, but it's hard to say. Well,
whatever they were looking for, they were obviously looking for you this year.
Yes.
I mean, you won it with Thames Glass. I'm kind of interested to talk about glass, traditional glass, first, for an audience of, well, let's say a mixed audience, listen to this show. So can we talk about glass first of all, and what's it generally made of?
Yeah, so my recipes, a lot of my kind of inspiration was looking at a typical kind of soda lime recipe. So it's one of the most common types of glass you'll see in a lot of sort of tableware pieces. And it's predominantly made of 3 main sort of ingredients. So you've got the main body of the glass, which is kind of the former, and that would be the sand source or a silica source. You've then got the alkali source. So this helps to kind of bring down the melting temperature of the sand, because sand melts at an extremely high temperature just by itself. And that could be something like soda ash, and then a calcium lime source, and that can help strengthen the glass. So that could, for example, be something like calcium carbonate. But there are kind of those 3 elements that I was looking at anyway to inspire me to create my own glass recipes and to start working with alternative materials.
And then those materials, presumably, not being a glass expert, but they're heated to extraordinarily high temperatures, melting them into a liquid that can be shaped and then cooled.
Yes, correct.
Interesting. So the obvious next question in that case is, what's different about Thames Glass?
So Thames Glass is really looking at how we can create a new type of glass, but working with various local and waste materials. So it's really thinking about a lot of these materials have to be very heavily mined. They're overly extracted. A lot of them are materials that we're running out of, and they have to be very pure. They're often transported from all around the world. So I was really interested in thinking about this idea of geo-specific glass making and taking inspiration from ancient glass making, specifically around the forest glass era.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What is the forest glass era?
Yes, it was between the 17th and 19th century, I believe, in northwestern kind of central Europe. And it was really where they were making glass within the forests, and there was kind of abundance of wood at that time, and they were actually using the wood to fire the furnaces. So they'd be chopping down the wood, firing the furnaces with the wood, but then also making the glass from locally sourced materials. So things like even the ash from burning that wood, they would use in their own recipes, often working as well with local river sands. Yeah, really kind of thinking about that and how we can look at doing that in kind of modern day, but predominantly looking at more working with sort of waste sources rather than chopping trees down.
Fair enough.
But yeah.
No, sensible, I imagine.
Yes.
Although we have done podcasts about why we have to chop trees down, but that's a conversation I suspect for another day. So what waste materials were you particularly using for Thames Glass?
So I was working with a local river sand, so close to the Thames here in Oxfordshire, and then sort of various kind of waste wood ashes that I was sourcing from different places. And then the quagga mussel shells. So that's an invasive species of mussels. I think it's one of the most invasive species in the world. It's causing huge problems for like multiple companies and individuals. And
how is it causing these issues, Lulu?
There's been such an influx of it, and I think people don't know how to deal with the issue. For example, when I went to Thames Water this morning, it was crazy. They just had these like tons and tons and tons of bags of the shells. They have to flush them out of the water pipes to actually be able to access the water. Yeah, they're clogging up the pipes. They're getting into the rivers. They're definitely a threat to the more native species of mussels. But they're not just here, they're everywhere. Is this happening like on a global level? And I think it's not having an answer to what do we do about this influx, but also, you know, this abundance of material. And at the moment, all of those shells are going into landfill. But really, they're an amazing material source. They're a very pure source of calcium carbonate, which can be used in multiple industries and art forms. So there is a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and tell me a bit about your process. I mean, do you literally go to the River Thames with a bunch of buckets and collect all these things, or is it rather more industrial than that?
No, that's pretty much how it looks, yeah. So just kind of taking samples with bags, and with a lot of the materials that I work with, I have to wash them to clean off any residue. So kind of begin with sort of a washing process and then drying, and then often sort of grinding, because really for glass making and creating batches, you want to have a really, really fine material, and that helps with the melting process. So it's about getting it as dry as possible and then grinding it up and then sieving it. So it's, yeah, almost like a flour kind of texture. But depending on the material, it changes a bit from material to material. And then it's, yeah, about getting your quantities. So I'd have a recipe formed before I would do this.
I mean, presumably you had to discover your own recipes. I mean, there is alchemy involved in all this.
Yeah, a lot of it came, I think when I first started doing this at St. Martin's, it wasn't really much guidance because glass wasn't taught on the course, but it was more about giving us opportunities to explore different materials and different crafts and different processes. And I think my kind of initial understanding and practice of glass really was reaching out to different glass scholars, different glass groups, glass blowers, and learning a lot from them. Initially, I collaborated with a group called the Post-Disciplinary and Experimental Glass Group, and they're based up in Newcastle University. And they do a lot of work with ancient glass recipes, glass archaeology, and sort of ancient furnace building, and a lot of sort of the recipes and materials I was working with. So I was getting advice from them about quantities and kind of different things to experiment with. I think through kind of talking to people, collaborating with different groups, and yeah, doing my own kind of experimentation, but also reading a lot of ancient texts as well. I got a lot of my sort of understanding about processing and recipes through these kind of texts. So a lot of research involved it as well. But yeah, a lot of experimentation. It took a lot of trials to kind of get to an actual workable glass.
Yeah. I guess what's interesting about the Design Museum show is seeing how your glass has developed and changed over the years that you've been working on this. Because how many years is it now?
Between 4 and 5 years.
Yeah. There's an interesting embrace of imperfection.
Yeah.
Tell me about imperfection. It seems important to your practice.
Yeah, definitely. I think just the nature of working with these materials, one of the things you're going to get with that is an imperfect glass, because a lot of these materials contain impurities, and those impurities will maybe add color, or they might add some kind of textured quality to the glass. But really, I think it's also about looking at how they affect like the workability, and that in itself can affect how the glass looks. So I think because a lot of the very perfect glass that we see would have to be coming from, these very like pure, extremely high quality materials, the ones that I was kind of speaking about before, that have to be transported over and heavily mined. So the idea is to explore how we can think about a new view of glass, a new view of what luxury could look like through working with these different waste materials, and how they might actually impact what that glass might look like, whether it's through colour or texture.
Although, that said, and I appreciate all that, those final pieces that you had in your show, which you did with the Blowfish Gallery and Elliot Walker, who is a fantastic glass artist and blower, the quality of the glass there looked a little different.
Yeah, it was really interesting, that project, because it was around the time of the International Festival of Glass last year. And Elliot reached out to me, and he'd seen kind of a project that I'd worked on previously with Maison Zero, who's the creative platform for regenerative luxury between Central St Martin's and LVMH.
This is led by Carol Collette, the excellent Carol Collette, right?
Correct. Yeah. And we did this project around regenerative tableware, and I was hired as a glassware designer for them for kind of the period of 5 months. And we ended up making this collection of pieces. And I think he saw that project and was really interested in this idea of, working with different materials to create our own glass batches. And, he said he'd love to collaborate. And they had at Blowfish Glass, they've got a 90 kilogram capacity furnace. So a huge difference to what I was used to working with. The furnace before that I was working with was 7 kilograms. So it was, a massive difference. And so I worked with the same recipe that I'd worked with on the Maison Zero project, but did this on a much bigger scale. So made 90 kilograms of my batch, and then we melted it down. And really it was such a learning curve, because even just kind of the difference that the furnace itself made on the glass was just like, it was amazing. It was like, we melted it over a few days. I think just the capacity of the furnace, the kind of the heat that it was running at, and the efficiency of it, just, by the end of that week, we had this sort of beautiful liquid molten that was completely bubble free.
Is that why it was blemish free, the quality of the furnace?
The efficiency of the furnace, but also the time of the melt, really made a difference. Elliot said that glass was such a joy to work with. And we did, kind of since doing that kind of experimental phase, we've had projects since then. And we've done orders to scale. And I think it just kind of proved that actually this isn't something that has to be done on a really small scale. We can actually, explore doing things on a larger batch.
Interesting. We talked a little bit about collaboration, and you mentioned Newcastle, and we've talked about Elliot and Blowfish. But you've worked with this extraordinary range of people. And maybe if I throw a few of them at you, you can tell me how you worked with them.
Yes.
Murano glass artists. When did that start?
Oh, that was like one of the first projects that I did as part of the Material Future course. So in the class, we were given a brief to design and create. Well, we didn't actually end up creating it because it was COVID time, but we did the design element and had to pitch it. There was a part of a watch for the company Baume & Mercier. So they're a luxury watch brand, and we had the opportunity to come up and pitch this, whatever part of the watch we wanted to do. And I ended up doing the watch face. So I wanted to do a glass watch face And I was interested in in creating or using, I've been doing a lot of work with waste shells that I'd been sourcing from fishermen in Cornwall, and I've been getting them sent up to London and grinding them down and experimenting with various material processes. But I was really interested in exploring how that material could be used within glass making. And at the time, that was very, very sort of early stages of what I was doing. And I sort of was reaching out to a lot of people. And one of the glass studios that came back to me that was interested in this idea was the glass blower called Benjamin Lintel. And he was based at Murano Glass. And it's a very kind of one of the youngest, really sort of interesting glass studios in Murano. And they're really open to kind of doing a lot of experimental work and exploring kind of new material possibilities within glass. And so I was sending him boxes of the shell powder because I couldn't actually go over at the time. And the first initial experiments that we explored was actually just rolling the molten glass in the shell powder and then blowing it and seeing what the effect was like. So rather than actually incorporating it into the recipe, it was more of a decorative effect. And from that process, Benjamin made several different glass discs. So we called them scallop glass discs because it was scallop shell powder that was used within that as sort of the decorative effect. So they're on display at the Design Museum as well. And that would have been the watch face for the glass company.
Hope you're enjoying the show. This is to remind you that Material Matters London isn't far away. It runs from the 17th to the 20th of September at Space House, which is on the outskirts of Covent Garden, so it's super, super central. We have a plethora of amazing exhibitors joining us this year, ranging from major brands and organisations such as Anglepoise, AHEC Europe and Axo Nobel, manufacturers like ARPA, Quadrat and Low Carbon Industrial, and companies that you might not know so much about, including Chinese fashion label Zugzag. There are features from the likes of the Material Way, the Wood Awards, the Only Natural Design Competition, and For Everyday Life. And of course, designers and makers who are confounding our expectations when it comes to materials. Look out for the likes of VTT, Trouble Studio, Tabitha Barge, Sophie Boons, and Rick Frampton, to name just a handful. Not only that, there'll be a talks program too. It's going to be great and it's free for designers and architects, but you must register. For more details, go to our website, materialmatters.design. The glass world is quite a tight-knit community. I think it's safe to say, the glass world, my experience of it. Are you embraced?
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely. I think that's such a lovely part of it, is the fact that it is, you know, it seems like a very tight-knit community. And then before long, you seem to know like so many people within the world of glass. And it's very much one where you kind of can reach out to people. And it's a very open community. And it's really nice in that sense because you all share this common passion and knowledge for this thing. I think every glass artist that I've met has been incredibly passionate about what they do and all seem to have this love for the material and its kind of endless possibilities. So yeah, I think it's an amazing kind of thing to be part of.
You've also been working around the glass world now for quite a few years. You weren't by training a glass blower yourself. Have you learned to blow as a result of all this?
No, I haven't. I haven't really had the opportunity. It's been so busy kind of doing the more kind of alchemy batch making side of things. But yeah, hopefully in the future, like if I do end up kind of getting a glass melting furnace and we melt our own glass in there, then definitely one of the things to do alongside that would make sense is actually, you know, to blow some pieces. So getting some initial training in that would be, is up on my list, definitely.
You also work with Thames Water.
Yes.
With Rebecca Elliott.
Yes, correct.
How did you get that invite? And again, a bit like the glass blowers, did they automatically go, oh yeah, no, this is a project we want to get on board with?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I was trying to find a sort of shell source around the Thames and I was collecting the sort of more native shells. You could often find them, the ones that kind of you see on the riverbanks, and birds maybe picked them up and just discarded them, but they couldn't get very much on a scale. And then through a conversation with one of the river organisations that I'd been working with, Thames 21, they told me about the quagga mussels and the issues surrounding that. And they said, I think, being Thames Water being kind of the local water company to me at the time, they were having these, huge, colossal problems with them. And I think it was really like trying to find the right person in Thames Water very difficult. But through kind of an initial email telling them about the work that I was doing, the project, and then that being kind of, forwarded and forwarded and forwarded. Eventually it did get through to Rebecca, and she was so open to it. She really loved the idea. I think, it's been, they've been actually so supportive, and it's just, I think they're actively looking for solutions for these shells. So, when I said about using them within glass making, they were really, really open to it.
Mm. And you've also been looking at how the materials you use can lower the melting point of the glass you make, which in turn reduces carbon emissions.
Yes.
I think I'm right in saying that was part of the LVMH platform led by Carol Collett.
Yeah.
So how does that work chemically? What are you adding to the mixture to do that?
So one of the materials that I was interested in working with as part of that project was wine lees, which is the waste sediment made during the winemaking process. So it's kind of the sludge that you get at the bottom of barrels. And it was used, there's documents and evidence of being used by an alchemist, priest maker called Antonio Neri. And he wrote the book Art of Glass around 400 years ago. He used wine lees and kind of, ceramics and glass making. But there's a translated version of his book online. And I was really interested in using wine lees as one of my material sources. Kind of as part of that project, I ended up working with Sheffield and Hallam Glass Research Centre, and they've got amazing lab facilities. And we did a lot of experimenting with different glass recipes and various materials. And one of the things, we realized was, if we kind of lowered the melting temperature, then it will help with the workability of the glass. And we discovered that wine lees are actually an amazing source of potassium. So it's another word for a kind of a flux, that kind of alkali source that I spoke about before, but it really helps to reduce the melting temperature of the rest of the batch. So usually things like potassium or sodium, they kind of act as flux sources. Yeah, it's a lot of sort of chemistry and kind of understanding a bit about that. But through working with experts at Sheffield, it was amazing to see what differences certain materials could make to a glass recipe.
And has there been a final result of that, Lulu?
Yes. So the collection with Elliot, the final pieces in the museum, they're all kind of made from that recipe. And also the pieces from the Maison Zero collection are made from that recipe. One
thing I've always been interested in you and your work is kind of which came first, the Thames or an interest in glass? Because I think I'm right in saying you used to swim in the Thames as a child in Oxfordshire, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Growing up kind of very close to the Thames. Myself and my family, we're all kind of crazy cold water swimmers, and we'd go swimming in the Thames pretty much every day of the year, I think, like without wetsuits, and just amazing. I just loved it. So I would say probably the connection of the Thames came first.
So then how did that connection turn into glass? The connection was at first the Thames, but then you had to decide what you were going to do with the Thames. Why glass?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a funny time because it was around COVID time when in 2020 to 2000, when I did the course from 2020 to 2022. But I kind of had already started experimenting with my own glass recipes at that point and was looking for inspiration for where I could really create a very local recipe. And I was really inspired by thinking about my own kind of local landscape. And that was where I was living at the time back in Oxford. And I think really we were spending so much time around the river because we couldn't do much else. And so I was just, incredibly inspired by that landscape and thinking, oh, actually there is materials here that I could work with. So I already had that sort of connection with the Thames and kind of being, a very kind of avid cold water swimmer. And it just seemed to kind of make sense to kind of base a glass recipe around that location.
So you have something to thank COVID for, in other words?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, it was strange because we didn't have access to a lot of the other sort of workshops within the university and we had to spend so much time at home. But really, I kind of made the most of that in the sense that I would just be doing so much research about glass making. It gave me an opportunity to do that, a lot of that research, and also to reach out to various individuals and organizations and have meetings and tell. And I think at that time people were really open to having meetings and kind of, it was amazing. I met such an array of really interesting people and people who are really open to helping.
We were just touching on your background and your family, who we now know are a bunch of avid cold swimmers, no wetsuits, all year round. Do you come from a creative family?
Yeah, very creative. My mum is an animator. She actually worked on The Snowman. She was like one of the key animators on that.
That's amazing.
Which has always been a bit of a claim to fame, kind of growing up. And my dad works in publishing. My sister's, she kind of, has a very creative background. And my brother's, a music producer. So we're all kind of doing like different bits.
So were you always drawing as a child? Presumably your mother was insistent that you had paints and things the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were always like very creative, probably quite strange children. But we all kind of were doing like a lot of painting. There was always like lots of like art things going on in the house. And I always just loved like dressing up and fashion. I think that was like my kind of, that's definitely the thing that I kind of was drawn to, I think, growing up.
Am I right? I read, I think in Crafts magazine, there was a profile of you a while ago, that your grandfather was a scientist.
Yes, he was a weed researcher. So he travelled extensively all around the world looking at various weed sort of research, which was very interesting.
And in some ways, you're a combination of the two, right? There's the art side and the alchemy science side going on as well.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got the science side of my family. So he was a scientist and then his father was a scientist. And with my mum being very much kind of in the arts world. So I think actually weirdly it made sense to go down the path that I have gone down, thinking about sort of family history and I suppose, the interests that were there.
What were you like at school? I mean, do you have a broad range of interests or you're laughing? Tell me about the school days, Lulu.
I just always loved art, to be honest. I just think I wasn't really interested in anything else. I just wanted to do art. And when I was 17, I actually didn't really like school. I just hated discipline and kind of wanted to leave as soon as I had the opportunity. So at 17, I just was like, I actually managed to get an A-level early. And that was really because I wanted to go to art school so much. So at the age of 17, I left school and then moved to London and did the art foundation at Central St Martin's.
Oh, moving to London is quite a big move at 17.
Yeah, it was. I actually had a job in London as well at that time. So I was commuting from Oxford to London on the weekends and working in a clothing shop. And I was like incredibly ambitious at that age, but also just like, just very happy to do things by myself. And the idea of moving to London and being independent just kind of was like, I was so excited for it. And I moved to Hackney and definitely felt a lot younger than a lot of people, but it was an amazing learning curve, I think, coming from school and just opening your eyes up to so many things.
So you did foundation at Central St Martin's.
Yeah.
But then you went to Falmouth and you studied photography. So presumably it took you a little while to work out you wanted to be a designer. Why photography?
I actually did fashion photography. And I think my art foundation, I'd done fashion styling. You do a bit of everything in the foundation and then you kind of specialize at the end. And I specialized at the end in fashion styling. I just love fashion at that age. I was like really into clothes and design. But then photography was something I always just was really interested in. And I took all of my own photos but particularly like more kind of just taking pictures of different kinds of people. It wasn't necessarily so much the fashion itself. I was more interested in like interesting people and kind of their story and how you can document that. So I think, I didn't know at that age, I just felt like quite drawn to the course of doing, because it was a combination of them both, I think, fashion and photography. So it was a kind of interesting transition.
But also another quite significant move from London at the age of 17 to Falmouth in Cornwall. It must have been quite a culture shift, I'm guessing.
I actually applied for it was the fashion communication course at Central St Martin's, and I just kind of put a lot of I just really wanted to do that course, and I only applied for that course and the course in Falmouth, and didn't get into Central St Martin's and was like really gutted about it. But then when I went down for the interview at Falmouth and I did get in, and I was just like going down there, and like it is a culture shock, but it's like the nature down there is just incredible. And I think, and actually quite a nice transition from being somewhere that was so intense to then suddenly being in Falmouth, which had a much more chilled attitude and beautiful landscapes, and just like the ocean just was amazing. And I think it was definitely the right path for me at that time, because I just, adored my time at Falmouth.
So you did this fashion photography course at Falmouth, and then there is a kind of a 7-year gap between you finishing that and you ending up on the Material Futures course back at St. Martin's, where you'd started your foundation. So what did you do in those 7 years in between?
Well, after I graduated, I was in so much debt, I had to move home and just work in a pub for a while to pay that off. And then, I think I was at a bit of kind of a loose end and not really sure what I wanted to do, but ended up going traveling. And one of the places we went to was India, and we spent 5 months there. And I was just so inspired by like all of the amazing materials out there. It was just like some of the most beautiful materials I've ever seen. And started to kind of think about how I could create some of my own clothes. I just started off really small, just working with some tailors out there and putting some designs together and making some sort of these kind of like play suits and 2-pieces from various like really beautiful materials. And then I discovered, went to kind of one of these markets, and there were all these kind of discarded bed sheets, but they were really, really amazing bed sheets. They had like all of these crazy patterns on them, and they were really beautiful. And so I was thinking, surely we could like use these bed sheets and turn them into various clothing items. And it sort of inspired me to kind of think about creating my own kind of fashion label. And then I got some really amazing connections with some local tailors there. And we just started to work together and started to make some of these pieces, and then they would kind of ship them over. And then I started to just selling them at places like initially just a bit online, and then a kind of local markets, and then branching out. So we did some bigger events kind of at festivals and things. So it was just like a really fun time, and like an amazing opportunity to get to work out there.
So you created your own fashion label, is what you're fundamentally saying. Very good.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we had a great opportunity to work with a local NGO out there as well, who were doing a lot of work with women that didn't come from very good backgrounds. And it was giving them opportunities to kind of actually get involved with the sewing side of things, giving them the skills to do that. So I was doing a lot of work with them, and they were doing a lot of sort of organic dyeing with different materials. And we created a limited collection of them as well. So it was an incredible opportunity to get to work with such an amazing array of different people from kind of all over.
Yeah. Yeah. So was there a moment when you realized, I don't want to be in fashion and I do need to think about the future of materials?
Yeah, I don't know. It was various reasons, I think, but really just wanting to find a new direction, but staying within that interest of working with different waste materials and falling into the glass world. It was almost like a really happy accident. And I think, I was just feel now so grateful to kind of have had that opportunity.
The big question that designers such as yourself are always asked about is scale, which you've touched on, obviously, with the work you did with Elliot. But I know, for example, that you worked with the architect Bureau de Change and Here Design to create glass tiles a couple of years ago. And there was talk about it becoming cladding for buildings in the future. Has that project gone any further?
No, unfortunately, it never went any further. I think a lot of the issues really came with sort of the access that we had to kind of the testing of the material itself and how that would be applied to something that was used within architecture. I think for that process, we just needed to have so much more kind of funding than we did. So I think it kind of could show that this is an idea and this is a prototype of what it could be. But unfortunately, it never did get taken any further. But who knows, maybe in the future that might happen.
So it was like a project for a show, wasn't it?
Yes. It was part of my last year of university. And a few of us got selected to collaborate with Here Design, which is an amazing design agency. And they linked us up with the architect firm. And kind of together we created this collection of carafes and tumblers and tiles. And those pieces were then exhibited at London Craft Week, which was in May 2022, I believe.
In that case, can you scale up, and would you want to? I mean, is there a danger, beyond the art world, if you like, beyond, the Blowfish Art Gallery, is there a danger that you lose that sense of locality if you did?
I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to scale this up. I think, having done that work with Elliot and Blowfish, it just kind of proved that this can be done on a bigger scale. But a lot of the limitations really come with the access to materials. So recently, that's why I've been looking at how we can work with a lot of local byproduct waste from various industries and stuff that's actually produced on a really big scale. And that can be used in glass batches.
Such as?
For example, like the biomass ash. So it's ash kind of produced from when they're kind of burning various kind of natural materials, things like straw, wood pallets, and that creates an energy source. But one of the byproducts of that is this ash that you get. So we were getting that from power stations. And then that is produced on a massive scale, but it's also contains lots of minerals, which are really good for glass making. So we use that in our latest recipe as well. The wine lees as well. There's a huge market and array of different wineries. And just having done that project, I spoke to so many different wine makers and companies. They all have wine lees. So it was like, there's an amazing access to that as a material resource. The quagga mussel shells, again, there's huge amounts of this material being produced. So I think, with certain materials, there's more limitations, but I think it's also about having the right infrastructure there, which I think is really hard doing this kind of by myself, doing the whole processing and sieving and grinding everything. It's really thinking about how can that be taken to the next level. And for that to happen, there would have to be, machinery and different, maybe even, where's that machinery going to be put? So it's almost like thinking about how it can scale up from just me doing this to kind of, I don't know. I can kind of envision it. It's like, getting to that end point. But of course, all of these things involve a huge amount of funding.
So it's designing the system. Now you've designed the material, it's designing the system to scale.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's so much, I think having just done this, it kind of just proves that it can be done. And the work that, that and the collections that I've made. And I think there are factories and glass companies that are, I think that are really on board with this. Like I know there's Glass Futures up north, and they're kind of, I'm not sure if it's actually opened yet, but they've just sort of been in the process of building like this pilot big glass making factory, but on a huge scale. And I think within that there's opportunity to experiment with different materials, but they're like doing it on a much, much bigger scale. And there are glass factories kind of, I think in Spain, that are also experimenting on a small scale with different materials. So I think there are things happening, but it's just thinking about, it would be nice to be able to incorporate a lot of these materials and actually make a fully circular glass on that scale. But exactly, it's designing a new system.
So we are coming to the end of our time, but you have this £10,000 in your back pocket.
Yes.
You obviously have a studio to build. What else can we expect from you in the future?
Hopefully a lot more kind of new collections. And next year, I'm really hoping, one of the things that I've always been really interested in doing is pursuing a part-time PhD and really to explore, because I have this amazing relationship with the Sheffield and Hallam University Glass Research Group. There could be an opportunity to do a PhD between there and Cornwall, but specifically looking at materials in and around Cornwall and working with local industry here. So doing a lot more sort of, a lot of new recipes, a lot of material development, and hopefully having a functioning workshop and studio space where people can come down and we can do a lot more kind of experimenting.
Well, we look forward to seeing the results of those experiments. Lulu, I really enjoyed that. Congratulations on the prize.
Thank you.
And all the best for the future.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was great.
To find out more about Lulu, go to luluharrisonstudio.com. You can go to our website, materialmatters.design, to hear other podcasts that I've done, to sign up to our newsletter, and to find out all about Material Matters London, which runs from the 17th to the 20th of September at Space House. For all the latest news and to see who's exhibiting, go to our Instagram page, which is also materialmatters.design. One more thing, it would make me incredibly happy if you went to my Patreon page and made a pledge at patreon.com/Material Matters. For as little as £3.50 a month, you can receive invites to various Material Matters events, as well as getting access to each episode before it's published to the wider world. Material Matters is a completely independent concern, and any help you can offer would be hugely appreciated. Ultimately, you'll be helping to take the message, the importance of materials, skill, craft, and design to a whole new audience. Thanks very much for listening.